aging, I realize how many pianists whom I have admired are today forgotten after they have disappeared. How many composers' music was written and eventually performed in their lifetime and today is invisibilized by the world of music. So it's really strange because ultimately it's timeless who, when, where produced, and then how it's perceived by generations after as a performer, as a composer. It puzzles me, it saddens me. It turns out the hierarchy of admirations for pianists who I had is, for some names are even unknown to my students. You would think in the small world, so to say, of pianists, they would be curious enough to know about their illustrious predecessors, regardless if they reject their point of view of performance or if they like it or admire it. I don't think it's necessary for the younger generations to know all the others because the work of music they play today has to be their own encounter with the music, not through the encounters left by others on recordings, or perhaps to validate their point of view, or perhaps to validate it by rejecting the point of view of the past pianists. Comparisons lead nowhere ultimately. Perhaps it's generational, perhaps it is a mythology that artists, actors, painters, any filmmakers have of specific great in this field of theirs from the past. And the few famous overwhelm the spot for the lesser known who perhaps were themselves very humble people. And eventually, to a certain extent, they were also very modest and not needing to leave an imprint of their persona over their work. And somehow we remember some people from the past most from the imprint that they left rather than from the work itself. And you have students of such who would say that they studied with such, and then you would feel like there is a affiliation, and then there is an organization of hierarchy of admirations, or then schools and trends, and say this is the Russian school of piano playing, this is the French school of piano playing, and make it into something like lanes in a track field of racing. I prefer this, I don't like that. But in fact, what matters is really how you play the meaning of the piece itself, which you have to build perhaps with a teacher, perhaps on your own, perhaps with both options together, so that you can reach your own musical meaning of it. And I find as a teacher myself that I'm trying to be a very cautious, attentive, subtle suggester, enhancer of points of view of the piece. I know ultimately the student will perform it their lifelong after me, the way it evolves for them, how it blossoms within them, how they construct their own choices in rejection or in adhering to some others. And because it's a competitive field, more technically than aesthetically, you can see that a lot of pianists are focused a lot on their technique rather than on the meaning of what they do when they play the famous pieces, which the juries compare them comparable with other performers. And then if they do research rarer, forgotten, or lesser played compositions of composers who today are no more in the mainstream, they feel like they have more room to demonstrate something so much more personal about it, as if they are speaking it through themselves, and not only as a recitation of somebody else's piece according to how it's supposed to be played, according to the people they heard the advice or the performance of. And I find that the sense of tempo, the sense of breathing, the sense of taking in account the meaningful intensity of a rest between a sentence in music and another, they are they result in the culture that you have gathered as a musician yourself, from the intuition of your musical ear to the acquired taste of your knowledge and learning and studying and analyzing the work as well as the way others play the work, and then find a meaningful purpose for you to play it other than just to try to technically play it cleanly enough to pass the competitions round, which is not necessarily unmotivational, because it does motivate you every morning to start again, to to do what the ephemeral production already evaporated before, even if you played it well yesterday. Every time is the only time that you play it. And so whatever you gather as a root that gives you a technical basis to match the unexpected of the performance moment, nevertheless, you more or less betray your own ideas, or you try to match somebody's piano ideas of the piece, or you try to make sure you don't, because you don't like the way it is. You find it old-fashioned, or you find it late. Um, for instance, Cortot used to delay the hands in Chopin, and today is considered silly, when in his time, when audiences heard him in the 30s, they thought it was the pinnacle of artistry. And the devices for interpretation of their own aren't anything other than constitutional and constitutive of what the pieces that they play are supposed to be, at least in the eyes of the beholders who play it for you. And this can change with time. Tempi, phrasings, choices of articulation, dynamics, pedaling, breathing, structural organization of the apex of the line compared to where further you could bring the arching towards. You don't think of all these elements in real time as a performer like ingredients of a cooking. It's more like all together coming in a wave that takes you by the inspiration of the piece itself. Ultimately, I think people play in piano only what they have profoundly heard from reading the score. And that should be so, not in rejection or imitation of somebody else's having played the score. Because you don't learn by ear only, though you do, like a mother tongue, but also by understanding, or if not understanding, by being in proximity, in immersion with the pieces on blossoming.